Hey YouTube, so for this segment I want to address the question, can you convert your LLC into an S corporation? Okay, get this question a lot. I see a lot of videos on this on YouTube, I see a lot of blog posts, so I thought I'd do one and add my 2 cents. So the first point, and the very important one, is an S corporation is not a legal entity type. Okay, they just don't exist under state law, period. And the reason why this is important, because the very question we asked at the start of this, can I convert my LLC to an S corporation, doesn't make any sense, right? The LLC is set up under state law. S corporations don't exist under state law, so you can't convert your LLC to an S corp. You could convert your LLC to, let's say, a domestic corporation, maybe a limited partnership. You know, those options are available because those are all entities that are formed under state law. S corps are not. So that's the first issue is, you know, LLC to S corp. The real question to ask is, do I want to file an election to change my current tax classification of the LLC into an S corp, right? And that's it, and that is the correct way to look at this, because LLCs can be taxed in a number of different ways. You can have a single member LLC that's disregarded for tax purposes. That can make an S election. You can have an LLC that is taxed as a partnership, right? Because it has multiple members. So it files a 1065, it's a partnership. That entity can make an S corporation election. And then in limited circumstances, you could potentially have an LLC that had already made an election to be taxed as a C corp, and now wants to go change its election again to be an S corp, right? So that's the issue here, is we're not converting an LLC into an S corp. We're just changing its tax classification, okay? Because an S corporation is just a federal tax law classification, that's it. So who's eligible to make the S election? If you're a domestic eligible entity. So they've got a list, I've got a few of the big ones there that come up all the time. You have LLCs and PLLCs. A PLLC is a professional limited liability company. That's a variant of an LLC under state law that's used for doctors, lawyers, architects, dentists. It's any kind of profession that requires some sort of state licensure. You might need a PLLC format than an LLC. So you really just have to check your state statutes to see what's appropriate for you. But the other one is just a regular for-profit corp. So if you go and you set up just a regular stock corporation, so an Inc. Professional corporations, PCs, that's kind of like this, it's a corporate entity, kind of like the PLLC, where PCs are corporations, but they're geared towards certain types of professional services. So doctors, lawyers, architects, and the same thing with a professional association. Okay, so you got an LLC, you want to make the S election, what do? Again, we're not filing anything with the state. We're not converting this LLC into some other state entity, so there's nothing being filed with the Secretary of State, right? We're just changing how it's taxed. So, you know, the way to do that is, you know, figure out, you know, first, do you have an eligible entity? In this case, we're talking about an LLC, so it is. The second piece is, in order to make the election, you've got to meet certain requirements, right? I mean, in order to be an S corp, you can't have any more than 100 owners. So let's say we got an LLC here and it's a partnership with 150 partners. That's not going to work, right? So you can file an S election if you want, but the IRS is going to reject it. It's not going to happen. So you got to have less than 100 owners. All the owners have to be natural persons or certain types of trusts, right? So again, if we've got an LLC here and let's say I own 50% and the other 50% of the LLC units are owned by a Delaware corporation, that's not going to work either, because you can't have Delaware corporate entities, C corps, that are partners, or I should say shareholders in an S corporation. Okay, so that's very, very important too. And then the last element is always, you know, one share of, or one class of stock rather, right? So what does that mean? The LLC units, the operating agreement has to provide that you're basically allocated everything in proportion to how much you own of the company, right? It sounds straightforward, but the reason why that's important, because in partnership arrangements, you can have different types of class A, B, C units. You can have certain profit sharing where you're allocating things to certain owners and then not to others. So not everything has to be split in proportion to your ownership percentage in an LLC operating agreement that's taxed as a partnership. In an S-corp, it has to be. So if I own 40% and my friend owns 60, at the end of the year, everything is being allocated 40-60 no matter what. There's no special allocations, right? Okay, so assuming you meet all those requirements, you actually go ahead and file the election. Not going to talk about all the details in this video rather, because it's kind of beyond the scope of what I wanted to address. I mean, the main thing I wanted to talk about is this whole notion about converting an LLC to an S-corp. Makes no sense, right? If you're talking to an advisor and they're using this kind of language, find somebody else, because they don't know what they're doing. The real question is, you're making an election. You're not converting the LLC to another entity. You're not doing anything like that. It's still an LLC under state law, and that's the long and the short of it. So thanks for watching. Hope you thought it was helpful, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.